I never expected to find the letter that would destroy my marriage while cleaning out old manuscripts from my husband's desk. But there it was, tucked between pages 157 and 158 of his latest attempt at literary greatness, a pale blue envelope with his name written in delicate cursive. My name is Alara, and until that moment, I thought I had a pretty good handle on my life. I'm a third-grade teacher who spent the last 15 years building what I believed was a solid marriage with my husband Nolan, a struggling writer with big dreams and an even bigger ego. The paper trembled in my hands as I read the first line, "My dearest Nolan." The rest of the letter burned into my brain like acid, each word more devastating than the last. The writer, someone named Tessa, spoke of secret meetings, shared dreams, and plans for their future together. But it was the last paragraph that made my knees buckle. I know leaving your family won't be easy, but what we have is real. I've never felt this way about anyone before. When you're ready, I'll be waiting. I had to sit down, my legs no longer able to support me. The irony wasn't lost on me. Here I was, surrounded by the manuscripts I'd been organizing as a surprise for Nolan, only to find my own surprise instead. My phone buzzed, making me jump. A text from Nolan, working late at the publisher's office again. "Don't wait up." I almost laughed. How many of those late nights had actually been spent with her? I thought about all the times he'd claimed to be meeting with editors or attending writing workshops. The pieces were falling into place with sickening clarity. Our son Micah's voice drifted up from downstairs. "Mom, what's for dinner?" I quickly folded the letter and slipped it into my pocket. "Just a minute, honey." I called back, trying to keep my voice steady. 16 years old and perceptive as hell, he'd know something was wrong the moment he saw my face. Standing in front of the mirror, I practiced my normal expression. But the woman staring back at me looked different somehow, older, harder. I touched my reflection, wondering if Nolan saw the same changes I did. Was that why he'd turned to someone else? Someone younger? My phone buzzed again. This time it was my father, Vernon. "Still on for Sunday dinner?" I stared at the message, my mind already spinning with possibilities. Dad had been in publishing for 40 years before retiring. He'd know people who could help me figure out exactly who this Tessa was and how deep this betrayal went. "Coming, Micah." I called downstairs, tucking both the letter and my broken heart away for later. First, I had to feed my son. Then, I had some investigating to do. Sunday dinner was always a big deal in our family, but trying to maintain normalcy while carrying the weight of Nolan's betrayal felt like performing in a twisted play. I watched him across the dining room table at my father's house, studying the way he casually passed the mashed potatoes to Micah, as if he hadn't just shattered our entire world. "How's the new book coming along?" Dad asked, cutting into his roast beef. His eyes, sharp as ever, darted between Nolan and me. Nolan's fork paused halfway to his mouth. "Actually, I had a breakthrough this week. My editor thinks it could be the one." I couldn't help but wonder if the editor was Tessa. The thought made my stomach turn. "That's great, Dad." Micah beamed, ever the supportive son. "Maybe you can finally quit that freelance work you hate." "Maybe." Nolan smiled, but his eyes flickered to me for just a moment too long. "Everything's falling into place." I gripped my wine glass tighter, forcing myself to take a sip instead of throwing it in his face. The irony of his words wasn't lost on me. "Alara, honey, you're quiet tonight," Dad observed, his tone casual but his expression concerned. "Everything okay at school?" "Just tired," I managed. "End of semester stuff." "Mom's been organizing Dad's office all weekend," Micah chimed in. "I heard her up there for hours yesterday." Nolan's hand jerked, knocking over his water glass. As he scrambled to mop it up, I noticed a slight tremor in his fingers. Did he know what I'd found? "Sorry, clumsy me," he muttered, avoiding my gaze. After dinner, while Nolan helped Dad with the dishes, Micah cornered me in the living room. "Mom, what's really going on?" "What do you mean?" "You barely ate, you keep staring at Dad like he's a stranger, and you haven't smiled once tonight." He crossed his arms. Looking so grown up, it made my heart ache. "I'm not stupid." "Micah," I started, but Nolan walked in, drying his hands on a dish towel. "Ready to head home?" "I've got an early meeting tomorrow." Another meeting. The letter burned in my pocket where I'd been carrying it all weekend, waiting for the right moment. But looking at Micah's worried face, I knew it wasn't time yet. I needed more information, needed to be certain before I blew up our family. Sure, I said, standing up. Let's go home. As we said our goodbyes, Dad pulled me into a tight hug. Call me if you need anything, he whispered, and I wondered if he somehow knew. He'd always been eerily perceptive about these things. The drive home was silent, filled with unspoken accusations and lies. I watched Nolan's profile in the darkness, wondering how many other secrets he was keeping, and how I was going to uncover them all. The private investigator's office smelled like stale coffee and secrets. Jordan Matthews sat across from me, spreading photographs across her desk like a dealer laying out cards for a game I never wanted to play. Your husband's been busy, she said, sliding one particular photo forward. This was taken last Tuesday at the St. Regis Hotel. My hands shook as I picked up the image. Nolan and a young woman with copper hair were caught in an intimate embrace outside a hotel room. Her face was turned away, but her body language screamed familiarity. That's not all, Jordan continued, pushing forward a manila envelope. I found drafts of his new novel in his cloud storage. You might want to read it. Back home, I waited until Micah left for basketball practice before opening the manuscript on my laptop. The story was about a writer trapped in a loveless marriage, finding salvation in the arms of a younger woman. The protagonist's wife was portrayed as cold, unsupportive, focused only on stability and routine. My phone buzzed. Nolan, got another late meeting. Don't wait up. I scrolled through the manuscript until I reached the ending. The writer leaves his family for his lover, describing it as finally choosing happiness over obligation. The words blurred as tears fell onto my keyboard. A knock at the door made me jump. Mom, Micah called out. Practice got canceled. I quickly wiped my eyes and closed the laptop. Come in, honey. He stepped inside, then froze, studying my face. You've been crying. Just reading a sad story, I said, trying to smile. Is it Dad's new book? He gestured to the laptop. He's been acting weird about it. I saw him delete something from his computer when I walked in yesterday. My heart skipped. What do you mean? He was writing, but when I came home early, he practically slammed the laptop shut. Then I heard him on the phone later, telling someone he'd taken care of it. Micah sat on the edge of my desk. Mom, what's really going on? Before I could answer, my phone lit up with a text from Jordan. Found something else. The woman's name is Tessa Reynolds. She's an assistant editor at Phoenix Publishing. There's more. Can you meet now? Homework time, I said to Micah, standing up. I need to run an errand. Mom, he caught my arm. Whatever it is, I can handle it. I'm not a kid anymore. I looked at my son, seeing the man he was becoming, and my heart broke all over again. I know, honey, but let me handle this first, okay? As I drove to Jordan's office, my phone kept buzzing with messages from Nolan about working late. Each life felt like another nail in our marriage's coffin, but now I had names, faces, and proof. The question was, what was I going to do with it all? I sat in Dad's study, surrounded by decades of publishing wisdom and the familiar scent of leather-bound books, finally letting the tears flow freely. The stack of evidence from Jordan lay scattered across his antique desk, photos, hotel receipts, and printouts of intimate emails between Nolan and Tessa. I should have seen it coming, I whispered, watching Dad's face as he examined each piece. All those writing workshops, the late-night editing sessions. Dad's hands trembled slightly as he set down the last photo. Sometimes the people closest to us are the hardest to see clearly. He paused, then added, I knew something was wrong at dinner Sunday. Did you? I laughed bitterly. I thought I was hiding it so well. Sweetheart, I've known you since before you could walk. You've never been able to hide anything from me. He leaned back, studying me. The question is, what do you want to do about it? Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. A text from Micah found something weird in Dad's office. Can you come home? Go, Dad said, reading my expression. But Ilara? Be careful. People who feel cornered can be dangerous. I rushed home to find Micah at Nolan's desk, holding what looked like a manuscript. His face was pale. Mom, you need to see this. It was a different version of Nolan's novel, one I hadn't seen before. In this ending, the writer doesn't just leave his family. He takes everything, leaving them destitute. There were notes in the margins about liquidating assets and transferring funds. I found it when I was looking for a stapler, Micah said quietly. There's more. He pulled up Nolan's email on the desktop he'd left logged in. He's been talking to lawyers. And look at the date on this bank statement. My hands shook as I read the numbers. Nearly all our savings had been moved to a new account 3 days ago. I'm so sorry, Mom, Micah's voice cracked. I should have told you sooner about the weird phone calls, the deleted emails. I pulled him into a hug, feeling his shoulders shake. This isn't your fault. None of it is. My phone buzzed again. Just talked to an old friend at Phoenix Publishing. Tessa Reynolds resigned last week. They're both planning to move to Seattle. The pieces clicked into place. The manuscript wasn't fiction. It was a blueprint. Nolan wasn't just having an affair. He was planning to destroy us completely. I looked at Micah, then at the evidence of Nolan's calculated betrayal. The time for tears was over. Call your grandfather, I said, my voice steady for the first time in days. Tell him we need that lawyer he mentioned. Now, the game had changed. This wasn't just about saving my marriage anymore. It was about protecting my family's future. Dad's lawyer friend, Sarah Chen, spread the documents across her conference table like battle plans. We've frozen the accounts he hasn't touched yet, she said, highlighting numbers on a statement. But we need to move fast on the rest. How much time do we have? I asked, watching Dad pace by the window. Based on the airline tickets we found, I'd say less than a week. Sarah tapped her tablet. He's booked 2 first-class seats to Seattle next Thursday. My stomach churned. Next Thursday was Micah's birthday. Nolan wasn't just leaving. He was choosing to disappear on a day that would permanently taint our son's memories. There's something else, Sarah hesitated, sliding over a folder. We found these in his cloud storage. Inside were photos of a modern apartment in Seattle, already furnished. The lease agreement was dated 3 months ago, signed by both Nolan and Tessa. They'd been planning this for months, while I'd been helping Micah with college applications and organizing Nolan's office. My phone buzzed. Nolan, planning something special for Micah's birthday. Don't make any dinner plans. He's getting bold, Dad observed, reading over my shoulder. Or careless. Neither, Sarah interjected. Look at this. She pulled up an email chain between Nolan and his bank. He's transferring the last big chunk of money on Wednesday. The birthday dinner is a smokescreen. I felt the walls closing in. So while we're all celebrating, he'll be making his final moves. Dad finished, his voice hard. Unless we make ours first. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Jordan. Tessa just booked a table for 4 at Le Blanc for next Thursday. Want me to get the 4th seat's name? Suddenly, the pieces clicked together. The 4th seat. The timing. The way Nolan had been pushing for Dad to join us for Micah's birthday dinner. He's going to do it publicly, I whispered. He wants witnesses. He's going to try to make me look like the unreasonable one when it all falls apart. Sarah straightened. Then we changed the game. Instead of waiting for his move, we make ours first. Tomorrow night, at your regular family dinner. But we're not ready, I started. We're ready enough, Dad cut in. Better to strike while we still have the element of surprise. I looked at the photos again. The apartment, the airline tickets, the careful paper trail of betrayal. Nolan thought he was writing the ending to our story, but he'd forgotten something crucial. I taught literature for a living. I knew all about plot twists. Okay, I said, pulling out my phone. I'm texting Nolan now. Family dinner tomorrow night. Let's give him an ending he won't expect. Sarah began gathering documents. I'll have everything ready. Just remember, once we start this, there's no going back. I thought of Micah, of the birthday Nolan planned to ruin, of our emptied accounts and his secret Seattle life. Good, I said. Going back isn't part of the plan. The manila envelope sat in the center of our dining room table, like a bomb waiting to detonate. Nolan was running late, as usual, probably saying goodbye to Tessa one last time before his planned performance at dinner. Dad squeezed my hand under the table while Micah pushed his food around his plate, the tension thick enough to choke on. When Nolan finally breezed in, his cologne couldn't quite mask the unfamiliar perfume clinging to his collar. Sorry I'm late, everyone. Traffic was terrible. Interesting, I said, sliding the first photo across the table. The traffic between the St. Regis Hotel and here must be particularly bad today. The color drained from his face as he recognized himself and Tessa in the image. His hand trembled as he reached for it, but I pulled it back. There's more, I continued, my voice steadier than I felt. Like the apartment in Seattle. The drained bank accounts. The tickets for next Thursday, Micah's birthday, by the way. Nice touch. Mom. Micah's voice cracked. What's happening? Nolan's shock transformed into something darker. You had me followed? He laughed. But it wasn't the laugh I'd fallen in love with years ago. Well, since we're all being honest. He pulled out his phone, tapped a few times, and my own phone buzzed. The email that popped up made my blood run cold. Screenshots of private messages between me and Jordan, planning our investigation. Bank statements showing the money I'd paid her. And worst of all, photos of me meeting with Sarah. You're not the only one who can play detective, Nolan sneered. How do you think it'll look to a judge? A jealous wife hiring private investigators, freezing accounts, plotting against her husband? Well, I've just been working hard, trying to advance my career. By sleeping with your editor? Micah stood up, so suddenly his chair crashed backward. By stealing Mom's money? Micah's son, Nolan started. Don't call me that. Micah's voice shook. You were going to leave on my birthday. My birthday? I reached for Micah, but he jerked away, storming out of the room. The front door slammed moments later. Well done, Nolan said softly. You've turned our son against me. Hope you're happy. He stood, straightening his jacket. My lawyer will be in touch. I'm sure he'll be very interested in all the evidence of your surveillance activities. As he walked out, Dad moved to follow Micah, but I grabbed his arm. Let him go. I need to fix this myself. But looking at the scattered photos, the empty chairs, and hearing Micah's motorcycle roar away into the night, I had no idea how to even begin. In trying to protect my family, I might have just destroyed what was left of it. I found Micah at the beach where we used to have family picnics, his motorcycle parked haphazardly in the sand. Before I could reach him, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. We need to talk. Tessa. 20 minutes later, I sat across from her at a 24-hour diner, studying the woman who'd helped destroy my marriage. She looked younger than in the photos, more vulnerable somehow. I'm pregnant, she said without preamble, her hands wrapped around a cup of untouched tea. 12 weeks. The world tilted sideways. I gripped the table's edge, steadying myself. Nolan doesn't know yet, she continued. I was going to tell him at the birthday dinner. Make it special. She laughed bitterly. God, that sounds horrible now. Why are you telling me this? Because. She pulled out her phone, showing me emails between her and Nolan. He's been lying to both of us. Look at the dates. The emails revealed a pattern of manipulation. Promises to leave me, then promises to cut things off with her. Playing us against each other while he drained accounts and planned his escape. There's more, she said. The publishing house knows about us. They're firing him, and his book deal's dead. That money he took? He's gambling with it, trying to double it before. The diner's door chimed. We both looked up to see Nolan standing there, his face twisted with rage. Well, isn't this cozy? He stalked to our table. Comparing notes? It's over, Nolan, I said, standing. The money, the lies, all of it. You think. He laughed. I've still got enough evidence to destroy you in court. And now I find you conspiring with. She's pregnant, I cut in. The color drained from his face. You're lying. 12 weeks, Tessa said quietly. Remember Paris? I watched his carefully constructed facade crumble. I can't. The timing isn't. The timing is perfect, I said, pulling out my phone. While you were walking in, I forwarded all those emails to the Gambling Commission. They're very interested in how you've been using company funds. You wouldn't. I already did. I turned to Tessa. The choice is yours, but there's a trust fund for the baby. My father set it up this afternoon. Nolan can't touch it. Nolan lunged for my phone, but Micah stepped out from behind the counter, where he'd been waiting. Don't, he said, his voice steady. Just don't, Dad. Looking between us, his son, his pregnant mistress, and the wife he'd tried to destroy, Nolan finally saw the truth. He'd lost everything by trying to take everything. The separation papers are with your lawyer, I said, gathering my things. Sign them, or the Gambling Commission gets the rest of what I have. Your choice. As Micah and I walked out, Leaving Nolan with the wreckage of his choices, I felt lighter somehow. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about destroying someone. It's about refusing to let them destroy you. 6 months later, I stood in my new classroom, pinning student artwork to the walls. The divorce had been finalized last week, surprisingly quiet after Nolan realized how thoroughly he'd lost control of his carefully crafted narrative. Need help with those? Micah asked from the doorway, holding a box of my teaching supplies. He'd started calling me Mama again about a month after that night at the diner. Thanks, honey. I watched him arrange books on shelves, taller and steadier than I remembered. How was lunch with your dad? Short. He shrugged. He talked about the baby mostly. It's a girl. I nodded, letting the information settle. Tessa had moved to Portland instead of Seattle, using the trust fund to start her own small publishing company. Last I heard, she was doing well. Mom. Micah paused, holding one of my old notebooks. Remember how you used to write children's stories? Before I started editing your father's work instead? Yeah, I remember. You should write again. He flipped through the pages. These are good. The door creaked open, and Dad walked in with coffee and a manila envelope. Thought you could use this, he said, handing me both. The envelope's from Sarah. Inside was a publishing contract, not for Nolan's work, but for a collection of my children's stories about a young boy learning to navigate life's complicated truths. Sarah showed them to some colleagues, Dad said quietly. They want to publish them. I traced the contract's edges, remembering all the times I'd set aside my own writing to support Nolan's dreams. I don't know. Mom, Micah said, still holding my notebook. Remember what you told me about revenge? How the best kind isn't about destroying someone. It's about refusing to let them destroy you, I finished. Exactly. He grinned. So maybe the best revenge isn't just moving on. Maybe it's finally becoming who you were supposed to be all along. Dad squeezed my shoulder. You know, he said, your mother wrote children's books too. Before she left us for her agent. I turned startled. In 30 years, he'd never mentioned this. Dad, sometimes the hardest stories to tell are the ones we've lived through, he said softly. But they're often the ones that need telling the most. Looking between them, my son and my father, both shaped by betrayal but standing stronger for it, I picked up a pen. The contract wasn't just about publishing stories. It was about reclaiming my voice. Well, I said, signing my name, I guess it's time to write our own ending. Micah hung the last piece of student artwork, a phoenix rising from ashes, painted in brilliant colors. Somehow it felt exactly right.